Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asset Preservation Hour. I'm your host today, Paul Gabbard, with my very special guest, Mr. Stewart Willis, co-founder of Asset Preservation Tax and Retirement Services. Welcome back to the show, Stu.
Oh, it's great to be here.
It's always good to have you, man, because like every time I host you, I learn a little something to take home, right? And so to the good folks of Phoenix out there, we're going to work hard in helping them in retirement. So let's start off. Can we talk a little bit about the market, Stu? What's happening right now? What's going on?
You know, once again, we're seeing crazy amounts of volatility.
Yeah.
The markets are all over the place. Interest rates are low but climbing. So that presents its own, specific issues. We obviously we're told that we're going to see 4 different interest rate increases here over the next year. And that's all due to inflation, and I think, that's the key word is inflation. Right now, Paul, that's all that's on people's mind is how expensive stuff is now.
Everything's expensive, yeah.
Yeah, and so these 4 rate increases that we're expecting here from the Federal Reserve here, at least that's what Jerome Powell said, was that can provide some really interesting issues here for the bond markets as well. So remember, generally, as interest rates rise, bond values drop. And so some of those people that have had a big bond portfolio can, really, suffer, some losses here. And, oftentimes we're asking the question of, does it really make sense to put yourself into a position where you're committing to these long-term, bond positions, at these super low interest rates? I mean, there's a lot of, interest rate risk out there as well.
That's right. Yeah. You're trying to secure your money, but that may not be the best place for it right now. Let me ask you a little bit about the Social Security front, Stu. Can we talk Social Security for a little bit?
Sure.
Let me ask you, so what can you do to help someone plan in Social Security? I mean, do you have that option available to folks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our firm really kind of made its name over the last decade on these big Social Security workshops we did. We'd have 120 people at the, Arizona Broadway Theater. We do them at these, country clubs like the Portobello Country Club, and, in some of the other ones here. But, we would pack them in and talk about that. Well, now with COVID, obviously nobody wants to get together. If you're going to dinner workshops, people are all super scary right now.
Sure.
So we're staying away from those workshops, not because we don't want to get together, but just we don't want to make people super uncomfortable with it.
Absolutely.
But, Social Security is really where we kind of made our name for it. And I think the one thing you can do with Social Security, number one, is be informed. Know what your rights are. Know what your availability is for options. What options can you choose? And the other thing, stop listening to your friends at the water cooler, because I'm telling you, water cooler talk is going to be the the end of you. It's gonna it is a problem. I talk about this all the time. I have a client that golfs with other clients of ours over at that Portobello Country Club. It's pretty funny because he'll come to me and he'll say, "Hey, Stewart, you know what? Jim told me that he made 24% last year, and I only made 18. What's going on?"
Boy,
And they're all just drinking and golfing and making up stories, and stay away from that golf talk. You talk nonsense with your friends golfing. Don't talk finance, because you don't want to be depending on that advice. But when it comes back to Social Security, make sure you're making a really informed decision. Make sure you're dealing with a fiduciary that really understands the program. And I'll go over a few tips here that I think are important, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, do that. That's great.
Well, number one, what I would say is don't make the same mistakes everyone else does. Know what's available to you. The basics of Social Security go like this. The earliest you can file is 62. The latest you can file is 70. If you take it and assume your full retirement age is 66 and 4 months, okay? That is when you get your full benefit. If you take it early, you are taking an actuarial reduction or a penalty, so to speak, right? If you take it later than your full retirement age, you are getting what's called a delayed retirement credit. Now, Social Security is one of those things I always told people, a decade ago, don't worry, it'll always be there. The politicians will never touch it because the senior citizens are the biggest voting bloc.
Right.
But believe it or not, Obama actually in 2015 got rid of tons of benefits, which is like the file and restrict, the file and suspend, where you could take half of your spouse's and let yours grow. There's all these strategies and they went away. And people are just like, they're surprised.
Right. No, I was just going to ask you that. Are you seeing dramatic changes on the way to Social Security?
Yeah, like I said, I never thought I'd see that change. But, the media was silent. Nobody even talked about it. And all of a sudden, people who thought they had these options came in and they, we'd go through their plan and they'd say, oh, well, I'm going to do the suspend option. And it no longer exists. So you need to make an informed decision. And also realize, we have clients all the time that say, hey, I'm going to take it because we think it's going belly up. And, I understand the sentiment. So they file for benefits at 62 years old because, they decide I'm done working. I'm going to file for my benefit. I'm going to collect it. And they can decide, their wife says, oh my gosh, this guy's watching Western reruns all day long on TV.
That sounds like me.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like my dad, right? He'd watch reruns every day of Bonanza and, I don't know, one of those other goofy ones. And mom gets sick of him. She's like, you got to get out and go back to work here. The problem is if you take Social Security early before full retirement age and you go back to work, you have limitations on your income. You can only make around $18,000 or so, and for every $2 you exceed that threshold of earned income, there's a $1 reduction in your benefit. So does it make sense to take that massive penalty and take it at 62? So remember, you're getting about 74% or so of your benefit if you take it at 62, plus you could get it reduced in half or so if you make money or you decide to go back to work, or even if you get a part-time job that exceeds $18,000. So make an informed decision when it comes to that. Make sure you understand the ages and the implications and the tax penalties. The other thing you should realize is that Social Security was never meant to be taxed. When it was created originally, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said it was never going to be a revenue source for taxation. But believe it or not, Paul, it was Ronald Reagan that made it taxable for the first time ever. And Bill Clinton made it way more taxable. Up to 85% of your benefit is taxable as ordinary income. And people just don't know what creates that. What makes it taxable? Well, what makes it taxable is what's called provisional income. And what provisional income is basically all of the taxable income, including tax-free municipal bonds. A lot of people buy these tax-free bonds thinking they'll never pay tax again. Well, you may not pay tax on those, but they affect the tax on your other stuff. So Social Security taxation is a really big thing.
Okay, so is there anything someone can do about taxation of Social Security?
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing about Social Security is just to make sure you have a plan, right? All these people that have put away this money tax deferred their entire lives, thought they were doing the right things to lower their taxes. But then when they're retired and they're taking money out of their thrift savings plans, their TSP plans, their 403Bs, deferred comp, 401k, IRAs, all of those things, you have this big tax time bomb because when you start taking income out of those now make your Social Security potentially taxable. So, for married couples, we're seeing between $900,000 and $1.5 million of benefit over their lifetime.
Right.
And all these people that are doing all this diligent planning when it comes to their investments never considered the taxation on Social Security. And if $1 million or so is irrelevant to you, well, don't do the plan and just file whatever. Who cares? Pay the tax and what do we care?
Exactly.
But if you're looking to create an efficient plan, you've got to consider Social Security taxation in your plan.
That's good stuff. Absolutely have to consider it. It's key. Let's do this. We got to take a quick break here. Would you remind the good folks in Phoenix what you're offering them today when they call in?
Absolutely. What we're offering today is a complimentary portfolio review to anybody that calls in today. And what you have to take action. And by taking action, we mean pick up the phone, get off the couch, give us a call at 833-652-7829, or even easier, pick up that phone that's right next to you, take a picture of this QR code that's on the screen right now. That'll lead you right to our website at apsitaxes.com. You know how to use those QR codes now because those were the menus that we had to use in restaurants and all of the places to pick up food now, right? I didn't know what a QR code was before COVID began. Now I know how to use them like crazy, especially for my trip to New York. But anyways, take action. Pick up your phone. give us a call or click on the QR code. What we'll do is offer you that complimentary portfolio review. We'll look at all the fees, risks, taxes, and diversification of your existing portfolio. But give us a call. Take action today. We'd be glad to give you that second opinion.
Absolutely. Get that second opinion. When we come back, we're going to talk about what you should be looking for in a financial advisor, and how do you know if your current financial advisor is optimizing your portfolio? Stick around. We'll be right back after these messages.
What happens oftentimes is we'll run into clients or potential clients that have saved all this money, but they're 75, 80 years old. They've got this big pile of money, but they're not enjoying retirement because they're so worried about running out of money that they never actually get to enjoy their life's work. And so to me, it's really rewarding to be able to create a plan so that these people can have a great time in retirement, knowing that they're not going to run out, that they're going to be fine. You know, I think it brings a smile to their face.
We get a lot of different people at a lot of different stages in their lives. And what we're able to do is, for some folks, it's able to tell them that you're on track. Keep doing what you're doing, and 15 years from now, you'll be retired and enjoying life the way you want it to be. For some people, it's people coming in and they're 3 to 5 years away from retirement, and you're able to tell them that, you know what, 5 years, 3 years, tomorrow, you're ready to go.
We are a complete shop. We handle estate planning, taxes, financial planning. We do a really in-depth cash flow analysis that is way more detailed than you'll see in the market.
Everything all in one spot, with the left hand always knowing what the right hand's doing. Because it's not just about the investments, but how's that going to affect your taxes? It's not where are you going to be 5 years from now, 15 years from now. And it's that back and forth full view of what the clients, not only today, but tomorrow and their legacy down the road is going to be, that really sets us apart.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Asset Preservation Hour. I'm your host, Paul Gabbard, and again, we want to thank you for being with us today, and we want to give a special thank you to Mr. Stewart Willis for being with us. He is the co-founder of Asset Preservation Tax and Retirement Services. An incredible job talking a lot about Social Security and the challenges, because to your point, there's a lot of things going on in Social Security, and people really need to know what their options are, right?
No question.
I wanted to jump into, because we promised the good folks out there, what should they be looking for in a financial advisor, and how do they make sure that they're optimizing their portfolios?
Yeah. No, I think number one, looking for a proper financial advisor, it's a super important question. I think the one thing that isn't normally on my list, but I think it's super important to think about, is you've got to make sure you enjoy being around them, right? It's funny because if you don't, I tell people all the time, if you don't like me on TV, you're not going to like me in person, so don't even bother calling. You know, it's not going to work out anyways. But, we have some great advisors at our firm that work really well, that people enjoy being around. Because, listen, this is a long-term relationship, once it's made. Mm-hmm. And, part of our first meetings are really about determining whether we like each other, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got to say,
sure.
I mean,
it's a relationship, right?
It's funny. Oh my God, I had the greatest story. I had a client that came in, and she was awesome. She was like, "Oh, I've been watching your show for a year. I love your advice." The husband was, man, he was a handful. He's a really tough guy to deal with, and he's like, I don't really care. I don't need to like you. I'm like, yeah, but I need to like you. I'm not. Listen, when people come in for their complimentary portfolio reviews, I'm not saying, hey, you can become my client.
Yeah.
And you're not saying that you're going to become my client, right? It's like a first date, determining whether or not we're even a good fit. So I think it's important to make sure it's a good fit.
Yes, because communication's important in a relationship first and foremost, right?
Yeah, no, communication, you got to get along. It's got to work out. You got to like each other. I'll move down number two, which is normally my number one. Make sure your advisor is a fiduciary, okay? And what we mean by a fiduciary is someone who works for you, and doesn't work for a big box firm that gets paid by, mutual funds in the back, door, so to speak. So you want to make sure you're dealing with a fiduciary. So ask your advisor, are you a fiduciary? And, if they say yes, say, okay, well, are you a broker? And the answer to both of the questions is yes. To me, number one, the fiduciary is a no, meaning they're not a fiduciary if they're always also a broker. They may be acting in your fiduciary interest, but you can't be both, okay, in my opinion. So that's super, super important. The other way you can tell whether someone's a fiduciary or not is look at your statements. If you're looking at your statements and your mutual funds have a bunch of A's and B's and C's behind the name of the mutual funds, those are loaded mutual funds. They're getting paid in most cases by those mutual funds. Those are loaded funds that pay them, meaning the advisor doesn't work for you. They work for those mutual fund companies. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that pay them. Because remember, with a fiduciary, you are paying for advice from the advisor. You want to make sure you're getting advice that benefits you, not just that benefits them.
Yeah, that's key.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So that's number one. Make sure they're a fiduciary.
Yeah.
Number two, make sure they're independent. And what by independent, we are independent advisors. We have, our money that we manage is managed at multiple custodians, whether it's, TD Ameritrade or Charles Schwab or Fidelity. We have access to 3 different custodians. It's a really important thing to have access. To us, we don't really care. TD and Schwab are in the middle of a merger, so they're a great, group of companies there. Mm-hmm. So people like to know that.
Yes.
That we're not just committed to a single company, that we're kind of, agnostic, so to speak. And we have some of our favorites that we enjoy, but it doesn't really change the relationship. Yeah. Number 3, you want to make sure they're a holistic planner. And what we mean by holistic planner is that they look at everything. They leave no stone unturned. So they need to be able to talk to you about your investments, about your taxes. We talk about taxes all the time. Taxes are really important.
Yeah. Huge.
Can they do estate planning for you?
Yeah.
We've had the same relationship with the same tax attorney or estate planning attorney for 15 years. Great relationship. I don't mean one of these trust mills that, sell you a living trust for $600 and are just there to sell you some goofy insurance product. If you're going to seminars and they're offering you cheap living trusts, generally you want to get up and run because, there's always a catch.
Yeah.
Right?
Ain't that the truth?
So you want to make sure that they can handle investments. They're a fiduciary. They're holistic. Do they do insurance planning as well? Because you want to make sure that you have proper insurance in place when it comes to life insurance. I think those things are really important. And I think first or finally, what I'd say is our concierge service. You want to make sure that your advisor is catering to you. I tell my clients all the time, once they've made their commitment to me and said, hey, we want you to help us, they have my cell phone number. They can reach me 7 days a week on my cell phone. I really don't care. Wife gets mad at me all the time about it, but even on vacation, I'm taking calls. If you end up calling me when I'm in Cabo, I apologize ahead of time for what I say. But
I may not have any service down there, right? That's the problem. I could lose service.
I may not have any brain power down there as well, because I tend to be a different character there.
That's all good. Yeah, it's all good. Listen, when we come back, we're going to jump into more. We're going to touch on some pension talk. Can we do that when we come back?
Yeah, that'd be great.
But would you do me a favor, though? Remind the good folks in Phoenix what you're offering them when they call in today.
So what we're offering you today is that complimentary portfolio review where we'll take a look at whether we believe your advisor is a true fiduciary or not. Are you being treated in that fiduciary manner? What kind of fees are you paying? And you need to know what kind of fees you're paying, because if you cannot answer the question how much you're paying in fees, that's a major issue, because guess what? They're not working for free.
No.
Right? I don't work for free.
Nobody does.
I don't care. Listen, I have a lot of clients I love to death. But if I didn't get paid, I wouldn't be there.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. I love that you touched on that.
So make sure you understand how they get paid.
Exactly.
So, we'll take a look at your fees, the risks. Are you diversified or not? But you have to take action today. Give us a call at 833-652-7829, or even to make it easier, pick up your phone right now, your smartphone, click on the QR code that's on your screen right now, and go onto apsitaxes.com. That'll take you right there, and you click on complimentary portfolio review. We'd be glad to give you that second opinion, but you do have to take action.
Yeah, taking action, that's the key. Change doesn't happen without that. Bottom line. And how do you know what you don't know? That's one thing I think we miss a lot sometimes, is how do you know what you don't know? Experts are trained to ask you questions you never even thought of. You can't go to Google with a question you never thought of because you didn't think of it. Makes sense. You need to be talking to somebody who is trained to ask you these difficult questions that you didn't think about. 833-652-7829. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages.
This is the story of how you get from here to there. Right now you're here, but in the future, You want to be there. And from here, there looks pretty good. But so few get to there. Why? Well, of those who do make it, some will have luck, but most will have a strategy. They will save and invest, grow and protect, and they will work with advisors who will help guide their way. If you're looking to get somewhere, to get there, we know how to set a course. It's what we do, and we do it well. We're investment specialists, retirement advisors, insurance experts, and financial planners. We have innovative wealth tracking tools to monitor your progress every step of the way. Wherever you are now, we can help you get to where you want to be. The road between here to there is shorter for those who know the way.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Asset Preservation Hour. Again, I'm your host, Paul Gabbard, and I want to thank you for being with us today. Our very special guest, Mr. Stewart Willis, has taken some time out of his busy schedule to help us get more informed. And that's what this is about, right, Stu?
Yeah, I hope to help.
Informed,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so, speaking of being informed, let's talk about the word pension, shall we? I mean, man, that is a word that's changed dramatically over the last few years.
It has. And, thank goodness, we have some great companies locally that have some great pensions. We have some great, municipalities and organizations here that still do. But pensions are going the way of the dodo bird. Basically, I have a client the other day that, when we do our conversation, our fact-finding conversation, say, okay, one of the questions is, do you have a pension? And they say, yes. And I said, okay, well, who is it coming from? And I'm taking notes, and it's Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation. So these are basically pensions that have become defunct that are guaranteed by the government.
Wow.
And we're seeing that a lot. Like in Illinois, for example, there are clients that have depended on these pensions, and all of a sudden that pension, which they were relying on, let's call it $4,000 a month for the rest of their life, got reduced by 50%, or, and there were all these settlements, and a lot of them have been poorly managed. And so I think when it comes to pensions, you really just have to know your options.
Absolutely. And I wonder, Stu, what do you think, just the ability to take control of your pension, that's pretty important too, right?
Yeah, I think the one thing you do is you have to know your options. I always tell people, know your options. And listen, you guys are adults, you can make your decisions. My job is to make sure you're aware of being able to make an informed decision, not just what your buddy at the water cooler says. I always say, stay away from that water cooler talk, it'll get you in trouble, right?
Yep.
But let's take a look at Honeywell, for example, right? Honeywell is a phenomenal company, some great pensions. I have tons of clients from Honeywell and Boeing. But if you're a Honeywell employee and you have a pension there, well, your pension may not be the same as the person next to you, because if you started with, for example, Allied Signal, you may have different options that people started, that people that work for another company did. All part of Honeywell, but different pensions. So don't assume they're all the same. Make sure you know what your choices are. And so when people ask the question, hey, does it make sense to take a lump sum or to take it out over time?
Right.
Well, what we do is we first want to look at the strength of the pension. Is it going to be there? Is it strong?
Yes.
Okay. If that's a yes, then then we proceed to the next question of, let's do some illustrations. What is the expected rate of return? What's your life look like? Are you healthy? Are you going to live to 142 years old? Everybody's situation is different. It's not a cookie cutter approach. People want to know, they say, hey, look, you know what? I'm gonna live a short life, and I want to have a great time doing it. So taking a pension that lasts you 30 years for someone who's going to live 10 or 15 doesn't really make sense either, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you have options for lump sum rollovers, and you can roll that over to an IRA and then convert it, for example, to Roth.
Yeah.
But people who want to make sure that pension also goes to their kids, that option may not be available for them, Paul.
That's true. You're right. You're absolutely right.
But if you take control of it, you roll it over.
Yes.
Well, then you can actually pass that asset to your spouses or to your kids or to your grandkids. And it opens up a lot more options. Now, that is not for everybody. And there's some downsides to doing that. You need to understand what those are.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Very good stuff, Stuart. Can you do me a favor? Let's jump into talking about fees with people a little bit, because there is a lot of misunderstanding around fees. I mean, fees can be hidden in various ways, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, the one thing when it comes to fees, everybody gets paid. Every advisor gets paid. You may have been doing business with them for 15 or 20 years, and they may love you to death and think you're a great person. But don't think they're not getting paid to do business with you. And if you can't answer the question of how much you're paying in fees, that's the person that needs help, because everyone gets paid. You want to make sure whatever you're paying is fair.
Yeah.
And what you also want to do is make sure that you're in a relationship that is actually benefiting you. I don't care how nice the person is. I don't care how much you like them. If you're in a position where you're not paying any obvious fees, well, guess what? They're in there, right? Like if you have variable annuities, for example, you need to know what kind of fees you're paying. We're seeing up to 4.5% in fees in some cases, usually in that 3 to 4.5% range for variable annuities, where people had no idea. You know why? Because there's no line item for it. What we have to do is we have to get on the phone, and we'll call the fund companies. We'll call the variable annuity companies. You know, we call that parasitic drag. And so if you take a look at the S&P 500, for example, you know, from 2000 to 2012, the market didn't make anything. It literally broke even. It took 12 years to break even. You add a 3% fee to that, you're not break even. You're down 36%. And there's some compounding in there. I'm not smart enough, obviously, to do that. Do that compounded math. But you know, you're down. Right? And so it's really important to make sure you understand what those fees are. You know, if your advisor doesn't have a line item for what they're charging you, that's a problem. That means they're generally not a fiduciary, right? They're a broker. So you really want to make sure you understand those fees. And what we do at Asset Preservation is we'll spend, you know, the hour and a half that we give you as a complimentary portfolio review is your time. You can go and we can talk about sports if you want. I'm giving you your time. It's your, whatever you want to talk about, that's your time. I suggest, if you take advantage of the complimentary portfolio review, that we talk about something that'll really help you. And I promise you, we're always trying to add, you know, pieces of information that you didn't think about. Because you can't think about it if you don't know it, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Right? What's that quote you say there? I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, it's always important to have a second opinion. And listen, you can't get a second opinion from the person who gave you the first.
That's true.
Right?
That's right. And the bottom line of what I said is you don't know what you don't know. You don't know those questions. It's not your expertise. How do you go to Google with a question you don't know to ask? Because you didn't know it existed. That's why you have a professional who asks these questions that are important to you along the way. And to your point, Stu, the biggest point to this whole thing with fee, it isn't what you make, it's what you keep. And you've got to remember that. Just like when you earn money working for a living, you earn money in retirement. What are they keeping, right, Stu?
Right.
That's what it comes down to. We want to thank you guys for being with us today. But give Stewart and his team a call, 833-652-7829. Take advantage of that complimentary review, won't you? We want to thank you so much for being with us today. Be well and enjoy your retirement, everyone. Bye-bye.